Just to get back to an earlier thread of discussion, it really seems to me that you're conflating two very different phenomena when you mix
probably
when you mix Islam with Confucian society and talk about some kind of a coalition. It seems to me that there really is a basic problem in a fundamentalist Islamic society producing modern natural science or coexisting with modern natural science, which is somehow necessary for the creation of our modern, economic world. And so, in the short run, they're very blessed because they're sitting on a lot of oil. They can't create a, 1 megabit DRAM chip, but they can turn on a spigot and watch the money pile up in a bank account, and then they can buy the technology. But in the long run, that's not, a civilization, it seems to me, that is really at all going to be compatible with economic modernity. The real challenge, it does seem to me, lies in countries like Japan and others in Asia, where it's not just that it turns out that their traditional cultures are compatible with economic modernity, but there's some evidence that they're more compatible, or that what survives from the traditional culture is actually better at producing a high level of a technological society than ours. But if you look at Asia, the trends, it just seems to me, are very, very contradictory. I mean, there is, as you cited, this growing Asian consciousness. On the other hand, modernization theory, in a way, has worked better in Asia than in any other part of the world. That the political democratization, Western-style individualism has been proceeding in lockstep with economic modernization, so that the most economically advanced countries are the most Western in that sense. You look at Thailand, the people that were supporting the pro-democracy movement there are precisely those yuppie, the young kind of professional yuppie classes that have been, thrown up as a result of Thailand's rapid economic modernization. Same thing goes in China. And in many ways, in the end, it seems to me that you are underestimating the kind of universalistic, characteristics of Western civilization that make it not just the outgrowth of a particular, peculiar European cultural religious system, but, a kind of universal fit between aspects of that civilization and, kind of broader human civilization and, societies dealing with, the problems of a workable, technologically modern society.
Well, as I said, I think the points you made are plausible and in some respects even valid. Obviously, civilizations are going to work out their own compromises. I guess I'm a little bit hesitant, however, about making predictions about what cultures permit or encourage or don't permit or encourage. I mean, you say that Islamic culture, you can't have real economic modernization. Well, 25 years ago and before that, people, including Max Weber, were saying the same thing about Confucian cultures. They could never modernize. Now we're saying that they have modernized because they are Confucian. And I just, as I say, am a little bit suspicious about predictions that some cultures are inherently incapable of going along with modernization. And when modernization occurs, obviously this will involve not only bringing in some of the techniques and industrial skills of the West, but sure, there'll be some rub-off of Western values too, and the result will be some sort of a mix. But that's one set of issues. And that is, what does the final product, as China, let us say, modernizes, as it is obviously doing economically extremely rapidly, what will be the nature of the mix that comes out at the end? That's one issue. The second issue is how will this entity, this much more powerful economic and military entity, relate to the West and other civilizations? I mean, if I had to predict what in the long run was going to be the great conflict of the mid-21st century, it would be a replay of the conflict between China and Japan, with the outcome being rather different than it was before. Yes.
I have two questions. One is that we've talked, or I've heard you say that most of the civilizations are becoming more religious. And I've always thought of our own society, the United States, as being a fairly religious society except the elites. But I don't, in general, see Western society becoming more religious. So I wanted to ask you if you thought that was the case in our own civilization.
You mean in Europe?
The West in general, North America.
Well, but you've already conceded that the United States is fairly religious.
But my question has to do with the direction. Are we becoming more religious like other civilizations are becoming more religious?
Certainly has been a religious revival in this country, and there's been a renewed religious fundamentalism in this country. Now, I don't know how long it will continue, and I wouldn't want to try to predict what may happen in Europe, except that insofar as Europeans begin to feel, as they appear to be beginning to feel, increasingly threatened by people coming from outside Europe and surging over their borders. One reaction to that certainly could be one which would involve some sort of religious fundamentalism on the part of Protestants and or Catholics in Western Europe. I'm not saying that will happen, it just could happen. Sure, okay, you said you had two questions, yeah.
The second one has to do with the rise of multiculturalism and that emphasis in the United States.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to know, is that for real, or is it that the values of pluralism, diversity, tolerance are really just Western values, so that multiculturalism is sort of the West in sheep's clothing?
Well, I don't know if I'd exactly view it that way. It seems to me one could raise the issue, which I think is raised by multiculturalism, of and that, it seems to me, is a trend that is happening in some respects. And that is something which we're going to have to live with in this society. And I guess it strikes me that insofar as the United States increasingly becomes more heterogeneous with larger and larger proportions of the populations looking at ancestral homes in either Latin America or in Asia, that this will raise once again a recurring issue in American history of what is the nature of the United States, what is